Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. It has been an eventful day for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in some good ways and some bad ways. We're going to talk about what happened today at practice. Josh Capo from Pewter Report is joining me, Scott Reynolds, your host today. And we're going to talk about Tristan Wirfs getting paid. No surprise there. Tristan Wirfs becoming the highest paid offensive lineman and the highest paid Tampa Bay Buccaneer in history today. So let's get to all of the news. Tristan Wirfs, Yaya Diaby's injury, and the latest on that. I'm going to bring in Josh Capo. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Scott. How about yourself?
Good. It's been an eventful day. You and Bailey Adams, myself, were at One Buccaneer Place for all of the action. We started off with a bang with Tristan Wirfs becoming the highest paid offensive lineman in history. And what is significant about this deal, and I'll let you talk about the numbers, this was a 5-year deal for the Buccaneers on top of the 5th-year option. So it's really a 6-year deal that's going to keep Tristan Wirfs in Tampa Bay through what, 2029, Josh?
That sounds about right. Yeah, 24, 25, 26, 27. Yep, 2029.
Yeah. So let's get into this news real quick in terms of the contract value, how much it is, what the average per year is. And then in a couple minutes, we're going to talk about Yaya Diaby's injury. And we'll get into the latest news there. And then we'll continue to talk about Tristan Wirfs and what this means. We'll talk about what happened at today's press conference with he and Jason Light.
Yeah, so it's a 5-year deal for $140.63 million. Most likely it's $140.625 million. And Adam Schefter just wanted to do some rounding. And what that means is for the new money, right? All of everything that he wasn't already set to get, which was this year's salary. The average per year on that is $28.125 million a year, which would clear the previous record set all the way back in April of this year by Penei Sewell of $28 million per year. So Tristan does reset the offensive line market. He resets the offensive tackle market. And but when you add in this year's salary, he was set to play on the 5th-year option, which would have been just under $18.3 million. What you're looking at is a 6-year deal, because the way the NFL works is this is a new contract that includes the year that was already placed, right? So it's really a 6-year contract for like $159 million. Which means the effective APY, which is what the teams care about. The players care about the new money and what that's reported, because that's a record-setting contract. It really is in terms of the new money. But for the team, for Jason Light, for Mike Greenberg, for Jackie Davidson, it's really a 6-year deal averaging $26.47 million per year. That would still be the number one number. It outpaces Penei Sewell, because Sewell's previous record contract was also an extension on top of 2 years that the Lions still had him under control. It does outpace Laramie Tunsil. So either way you look at it, it's the number one contract. But from an effective standpoint, the Bucs save $1.5 million per year over that new money mark. And that's pretty important. And part of the reason they were able to do that is because they really held to their guns on getting Tristan to agree to that 5th year. And that was really big. You and I have both done some digging on that and discovered that was a big point for the Bucs. Yes. They wanted Tristan to do it. They wanted him to do it all the way.
Yeah. And when Tristan talked about it today, you asked him that question, and you asked it to Jason Light too. And he's like, hey, I want to be here. Might as well do it, right? And I'm glad that the team held their ground. And from what I was told, the Bucs, because they wanted the 5th-year option. I'm sorry, not the 5th-year option. They got the 5th-year option. They wanted the 5th year on the extension, so much so that they would have considered taking this all the way through to next year and using the franchise tag on Tristan Wirfs. Like, that's how much they wanted that. So kudos to Jason Light, Mike Greenberg, Jackie Davidson for digging their heels in and getting that extra year, because listen, good offensive tackles are hard to find. Great ones are almost impossible to find. When you have a great offensive tackle, you do not want to let them go. And you want to hold on to them as long as you can. So this is 6 more years this year and 5 more years of number 78 suiting up for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers at left tackle. And that is a great thing. That is an absolutely phenomenal deal for both sides because it gets Wirfs the money that he wants, the long-term security. I think after his NFL career, he could probably retire. Probably doesn't have to get another job after he's done.
I would think so. Think so. And judging by how happy he and his wife and his baby were
technically
at today's
girlfriend,
press conference.
Meredith.
Girlfriend. I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah, that's all right.
His family. I think that he's going to want to focus on that rather than a second career. If I had to guess at that.
I think so. Yeah. And so here's a picture of the happy couple, Tristan Wirfs and Meredith Sutton, and their beautiful boy, Julius, along with Baker Mayfield to Meredith's right, Robert Hainsey, good friend of Tristan Wirfs, to Tristan's left. And then the bookend offensive tackles that we've seen a lot in practice while Tristan Wirfs has been not playing with the starters in the 11-on-11s. You have Justin School next to Baker Mayfield. And, of course, Luke Gedeke all stashed up with that mustache sitting up next to Robert Hainsey. So it was great to see his teammates there today. And of course, Julius, I think he probably has college paid for now.
I would say so.
Yeah, exactly. So a great day for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but almost a tragic day because the big news really was Tristan Wirfs up until around 10:15. And then Yaya Diaby, star pass rusher for this team, last year's leading sacker, 7.5 sacks, went down hard with an injury and didn't get up. And that's one of those things where you're holding your breath saying, wow, okay, trainers are coming out now, players taking a knee around Yaya Diaby. That's not a good sign. And then, of course, whenever you see one of the trainers literally sprint across the field, and I've seen that too many times, and it's never a good thing. When you see a trainer sprinting, that means they're going to get the cart. And they carted Yaya Diaby off of the practice field today. Thankfully, looks like crisis has been averted. Looks like disaster and catastrophe has been avoided. His left ankle injury, x-rays showed there's no fracture. Medical trainers quickly ruled out the fact that there is not any Achilles injury. That's always a good thing because an Achilles tear is, as we found out with both O.J. Howard in recent years and more recently with Shaq Barrett, an Achilles injury is a season-ending injury.
Yep. So
we're holding out hope right now, and I know the team is as well, that Yaya Diaby either has a high ankle sprain, a more basic ankle sprain would even be better, or a bone bruise. If it's a bone bruise, if it's a high ankle sprain, probably rule him out for the preseason and then trying to get him on the field maybe for week 1 because it's going to take several weeks to overcome those injuries. And we'll see. The x-rays came back negative. The good news for Yaya Diaby and the Buccaneers is that there were no fractures. Now it's up to an MRI later this afternoon to determine what those ligaments look like and how damaged they are from what we're hoping is a sprain.
Yeah, it seems, when you and I were there when it happened, and it just seems like the panic level immediately peaks, and everything since has been a gradual decline. I mean, and that was even from minutes afterwards, because they did go to get the cart, but then you saw Yaya not get on the back of the cart.
Yes.
He got in the front of the cart, right? They weren't trying to elevate. We also saw where he was grabbing. Typically with an Achilles injury, they're actually grabbing more towards their lower calf. He was actually grabbing right at the ankle. Right. So you and I both commented that we thought that maybe just that initial look looked like maybe that he had not damaged the Achilles. And then now with the x-ray being negative, things continue to move in the right direction from where they were immediately as he got injured.
Yep. I just put in the chat the latest update, which I kind of summarized there. But if you want to read the story, share it with some of your Buccaneer friends. I put that in the chat. It's up on pewterreport.com right now. Logan Hall said the injury didn't look that bad, and he was right there. So that's a good news right there from an eyewitness account. Bucs general manager Jason Light was asked during the press conference that he had with Tristan Wirfs in the noon hour, about 12:15. He said, and I quote, "Right now we are hopeful that we avoided something serious. We'll get more tests this afternoon. But right now there is some hope that we did avoid a serious injury." I don't have any other update than that. Yaya is a big part of our team. He's a great guy. He's another one of those high character players, great player. And I say, Josh, when you look at Yaya Diaby and his hot start, and you've been in town to catch the last two practices, this is a guy that I think everybody in the Pewter Report staff and probably most media members in observation of these training camp practices since they've started, he has been the dominant player. He has been the best player on defense day in and day out in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback, pushing the pocket, giving, whether it's Tristan Wirfs, Justin School, Robert, or I should say Luke Gedeke fits, and then looping inside, giving Robert Hainsey, Graham Barton, the guards fits. I mean, he is really ready to absolutely take off. And I kind of thought that Kalijah Kancey would be the guy that just would come on like a force majeure this training camp. And he's looked good, but it's been the Yaya Diaby show day in and day out.
Yeah, and to really kind of solidify that analysis, we all know that when it comes to where Yaya Diaby ranks among the Pewter reporters, I typically am the low man on the totem pole when it comes to him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the truth of the matter, right? Yourself, Bailey, Adam, Matt, all of you, I've been very high, and I've been the one who's been like, some of those were gimme sacks last year. The consistency probably wasn't there. It needs a lot of development. Let's take it a little bit slow. And I can say, from Tuesday night's practice when I was there, he got a couple of sacks. I saw more bend than I did on tape last year. It looks like
he's Pilates, starting, man. He's getting that agility from Pilates.
The funny thing is, all the talk's been about how he's been in the gym, he's been rocking up, and I'm like, he didn't need to rock up. Like, he was already rocked up. That is the power profile is only going to get you so far in this league. He's really got to work kind of on his, his extension, his bend, his winning the corner. Yeah. And it looks like he's been able to do both because I can the two narratives that I was a little hesitant on coming into my first training camp practice of this season, which was Tuesday night, was the hype around Yaya, and the second was the hype around Jalen McMillan. And I saw both for myself with my own eyes. Yeah. And I think I even took to Twitter Tuesday night and said, okay, I'm all aboard the Jalen McMillan hype train. So both of them have looked fantastic.
Yeah. And speaking of that, today's topic was supposed to be on today's show. You might have seen a teaser for it earlier today.
Yep.
It was Bucs rookies on the rise. And I say the rookie class has looked exceptional for the Buccaneers, whether it's Bucky Irving, number 7, Jalen McMillan, number 15, number 23, Tykee Smith. Chris Braswell has had his moments. Now we've seen Elijah Klein getting reps with the number 2s with Sua Opeta's injury. And he was seeing work at right guard. Now he's seeing work at left guard. He could factor into that competition with Ben Bredeson. I think right now it's Bredeson's job to lose. I think Bredesen has had a pretty good camp so far and was beating Sua Opeta. But with Opeta's injury, now it's going to be Ben Bredeson in the driver's seat for that left guard. But we'll keep an eye on Elijah Klein. But again, we'll be talking about the rookies in case there is some other injury news or something that happens that is sensational. That's going to be tomorrow's topic. That's right. We're doing a Friday podcast because there's a Friday practice. So make sure that you end your week with a Pewter Report podcast on Friday at 4 o'clock. Bucs rookies on the rise. We'll be diving deep into what these rookies have done and what they're expected to do in their rookie season here. So let's continue on with the show today. Let's get back to Tristan Wirfs. It was all smiles from Todd Bowles, who got a big hug from Tristan Wirfs, Jason Light, who got a big hug from Tristan Wirfs. And Liam Cohen got a big hug from Tristan Wirfs as well, the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. And Josh, I wanted to get your perspective here because you've only been in town for a couple of days. You've done a lot of extensive work on Liam Cohen's offense, really based upon what the Rams have done. And he is a Rams disciple, a Sean McVay disciple, kind of took that offense to Kentucky, which, playing in the SEC, which I call NFL Junior, because he's going up against the likes of Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn, these really stout defenses historically in the SEC. But doesn't it seem like this running game, and Tristan Wirfs is going to be a big part of it, is really going to thrive with a more diversified attack and the 3 wide receiver set formations that I personally love, because it automatically takes teams out of base defense, puts you in nickel or dime, because you have to respect the pass, formationally speaking, with 3 wide receivers, maybe even 4 receivers to a degree. But it just seems like when we see the Bucs run the ball in practice now, and Tristan, again, is a big part of it, they're holes. And these guys are getting to the second level.
Yeah, a lot. It's something you and I spoke about today, and something I noticed on Monday night as well. The run game in these 11-on-11s, good on good, it's definitely improved over what we saw this time last year with the Bucs. And if you can take an elevated run game and marry it with anything close to what the Bucs had at the end of the season from their passing game, I think that gives you a lot of confidence in the floor of this offense. Yeah. And you can kind of dream on what the top end can be, especially with the development of someone like Jalen McMillan as a reliable third option, and another year for Trey Palmer in this offense. So I think that things are looking up for this Bucs offense in just about every facet that you can think of. Getting the big names back, right? Because there were 3 big names from this offense that were set to leave this year in Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Tristan Wirfs. The development of someone like Jalen McMillan and Graham Barton. Barton's looked really good. I think that needs to be said out loud. And then just, again, another year in the offense for Trey Palmer. And I will say Chris Godwin looks more spry than he did this time last year as well.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other quick little notable things. Had a chance to meet Joel today, one of our Pewter Report podcast contributors here, always showing up in the chat. And so it was great to see him. We've had the opportunity to see several Pewter Report podcast viewers here. So I want to make sure to, when you give us a shout out at camp, we're going to give you a shout out in the podcast. So that was awesome to see. The thing too with Tristan Wirfs, and both he and Jason talked about it today. This is an incredibly tight knit team, and if you look at last year, I'm not going to say Devin White was a distraction, because this team had some respect for Devin White. He helped this team win a Super Bowl, right? He went through his own contract issues, didn't handle things the right way, but I don't think that he was disruptive in any means. It was probably more like an annoyance. And I don't think the players minded when KJ Britt took over as the starter at inside linebacker last year, late in the season. The players watch the tape, right? You can't fool the eye in the sky. It never lies, right? So that they knew what was happening when KJ Britt was in there, which was more consistency, not leaving your gap, not getting blocked 15 yards down the field, more stout at the point of attack, etc., than when Devin was in there. And now that Devin's gone, it's kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air. It's like everybody is rowing in the same direction. Everybody's on the same page. This is mission forward, and everybody's on board. And both Tristan Wirfs and Jason Licht talked in their press conference today about how tight-knit this group is. And that's so important. Team chemistry can help you win games.
Oh, 100%. And I don't think there's a single player on this team right now that wants personal accolades over team accomplishments.
Yeah.
And I can't say that was necessarily the case last year.
Right.
And not that the team didn't like any of the players from last year, but I think that this is an elite group of selfless individuals who honestly want what's best for the group as a whole. Well more than they do their personal accomplishments. And the only way you can foster an environment like that, and Jason or Todd Bowles, I think, talked about it a little bit today, is it starts at the top. It starts with the organization. It starts with ownership. It starts with Jason Light in knowing that if we focus on the team will focus on us. Right. And you're seeing that relationship, right? The Bucs now have not one, but two players who have reset their positional markets in terms of what they're getting paid. Right. And did it happen immediately? No, because Jason Light talks consistently about it's got to be the right deal for both sides. Right. We saw that with Wirfs in terms of what was right for the Bucs was a 5th year. What was right for Wirfs was resetting the market. You saw it with Antoine Winfield Jr. in terms of his cash flows and setting the market. So it's really like, there's an old song, one of my favorites of all time. I'll start walking your way, you start walking mine. We'll meet in the middle. Yep. The Bucs organization and their players buy into that mindset, and it's created this fantastic culture that is usually one of the first things that everybody wants to talk about. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think you nailed it right there. 2 things real quick. I did put Josh's latest column, Staple Concepts of Liam Cohen's Offense, which has got some great video breakdowns, as Josh does for us at pewterreport.com and in our Pewter Report social media. So check that out. It's in the comments. Great article. Helping everybody, myself included, become more acclimated to this Rams-style attack with the Liam Cohen spin on it that we're going to see in Tampa Bay this year. And I can't wait to see the preseason games. Usually, I'm one of these old-time guys. I'm ready to fast forward to the season, right? I mean, preseason games, whatever. But I'm really curious and excited to see what this offense can do. And, of course, it's going to be the vanilla, stripped-down version of it. Liam's not going to show everything. He's got I think a pretty good Washington Commanders defense with Dan Quinn and company coming into town week 1, followed by Detroit's defense, which has given Tampa Bay some problems in week 2. So he's not about to throw the best stuff out there, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen. So a little bit of housekeeping there. Make sure you check out that column. The other thing too is we didn't see Jordan Whitehead today, but as Todd Bowles said, he's got what appears to be a quad bruise, and that's not serious. So he wasn't out there today at practice. So even though Sua Opeta, unfortunately, is lost for the year with his injury, that ACL on Tuesday night, we don't have bad news to report for Jordan Whitehead. Just the opposite, that he is nicked up right now. And also Cameron Johnson was out today, the wide receiver, the impressive wide receiver from Barton College, who has really flashed early. And Chase Edmonds. Yeah. And it's another day. Chase Edmonds isn't practicing. What's new? But let me get your thoughts on what you've seen just so far. This is your first time to be on the podcast since watching these couple practices. You've read our Pewter Insider reports. Myself, Bailey Adams, I think do a pretty good job of encapsulating all this. But some of your takeaways from Tuesday night's practice, some of your takeaways from today's practice, Josh. Yeah, I think the one that really comes to mind quickly, it's kind of a back of the roster thing, but both Jason Light and Todd Bowles challenged Sean Tucker over the offseason to step up and earn the RB3 job. I don't think that was necessarily a foregone conclusion, despite some, myself included, I think everybody was really excited about Sean Tucker being somebody who the Bucs signed as an undrafted free agent last year. He started last year as RB2 for about a week and a half, and then got buried on the depth chart even after Chase Edmonds had been sidelined with some injuries last year. So both Todd Bowles, Jason Light came out. They said he's going to have to earn this job. From what I've seen over 2 practices, Sean Tucker is running very well, decisive in his cuts. He's getting upfield. I think he had a drop earlier today, if I remember correctly, on a scramble drill where he got behind his defender down the sideline. Would have been a big play. Just couldn't quite reel in the pass. I want to say from Kyle Trask, if I remember correctly. But other than that, he's looked really good. I think his blocking's actually improved from the few reps that I've gotten a chance to see. So that was one that stood out. Monday night, I'd say the defensive line was winning against the offensive line on a much more Tuesday night, much more consistent basis. You had a lot of would-be sacks if sacks were allowed in training camp. So that was something that was really nice to see. Zion McCollum, I think, has had some really good reps in coverage. And really, I would say that the secondary as a whole has done a pretty good job for the most part, outside of, I want to say, about a five rep series where Chris Godwin and Mike Edwins made a few plays, and then Cam Johnson and Jalen McMillan have made some plays over the last couple. But I know it sounds like every receiver's making plays, but honestly, the Bucs secondary has played top down. They haven't allowed a lot of deep passes. It's been a lot of underneath stuff that the receivers have been able to catch for the most part. And then I'll say Trey Palmer. We saw Palmer get a big deep ball from Baker Mayfield that went for a touchdown earlier today. That was one I was really excited to see.
You could see that coming, and it's just one of those things that when I saw him in the slot matched up with Lavonte David, and I saw them in single high, and sometimes what Todd Bowles will do is they'll show a single high look, right, which is that single high safety. It's basically cover one, right, and then you've got man coverage on the outside, and maybe it's cover three, right? Maybe it's a single high, and those two corners, will drop vertically and turn that cover one look into cover three. Those two coverages are very similar in nature. Sometimes, though, Bowles will show cover one or cover three look, and then you'll see that safety who's in the slot all of a sudden, hit that deep landmark. Bail, and they will turn into cover two. That wasn't the case today, and as a result, Liam Cohen and Baker Mayfield took full advantage of that particular matchup, getting Trey Palmer, who has that 4.33 speed, matched up on Lavonte David in the slot,
who does not have 4.33
does speed. Not have 4.33 speed, especially at age 34. And all it took was one little look, and I want to say it was Antoine Winfield Jr. who was deep, but Baker looked him off, actually looked to the right first, and had Winfield's back towards the play, and Winfield was drifting over towards Baker's right. And Trey Palmer was literally right behind him on the left-hand side, kind of running a flag route to the corner. And Lavonte David lost that race, and it was an easy touchdown throw for Baker Mayfield. And you want to see that. You want to see Baker Mayfield connect with Trey Palmer deep on those shots where he is open, because that wasn't the case last year. And it was great to see that actually happen. And it was a big play today. You know what happens when you super chat us, folks? The show stops, and we answer your question. That's exactly what's happening right now with Super Straight Cash, $4.99 with the super chat. Thanks so much. Where can the Bucs still upgrade or gain depth in free agency? Josh, there was an injury to Sua Opeta. We did see Elijah Klein, who has made some big strides and has been getting some buzz from our sources as that number 2 guy right now. But there is a drop-off, right, from the experience standpoint with Ben Bredesen, who's got some experience with the Giants at center and guard. Something happens to him, and boy, all of a sudden that interior, Josh, would be Elijah Klein at left guard, maybe a rookie center in Graham Barton, and then a second-year player in Cody Mauch. That's not ideal. Is guard a position where they might now look for some veteran depth?
Yeah, I think it is. And I'll say there's even one other internal option who I think gives more experience, obviously, than Elijah Klein. But, the Bucs have a lot of versatility with some of their depth players along the offensive line. So I think Brandon Walton is somebody who he's played tackle for the Bucs. He didn't play last year because Tristan Wirfs was able to go wire to wire. But the year before, he played a little bit of left tackle when Donovan Smith went down. And played fairly well over, I want to say, a game and a half, maybe 2.5 games. Yeah. He's got inside-outside flexibility, and the Bucs can sustain that because Justin School, he could play left or right tackle. So he becomes a true swing tackle, and then Walton provides inside-outside flexibility. Obviously, you do have Klein there. But if the Bucs were to look for an external free agent, there's 2 names that are kind of on my radar. One that I don't think the Bucs will go for, but I think it's something we have to mention because he's a premier player who's just coming off of an injury. But that's Connor Williams, who previously in Dallas and then last year in Miami. I think there are some barriers to that because he's played at an elite level I think there's no doubt about that, but
Yep.
you do have the injury concern. And then I think his agent has publicly said that at this point in his career, even though he has played both guard at Dallas and then center in Miami, he really wants to be a center. Like that's where he wants to sign with the team to be a center. And while I think Graham Barton can play guard at a pretty high level for a rookie, I don't know if the Bucs really want to mess with his development, as they've basically had him at the pivot this entire offseason, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if Williams is an option, even though he's a name that I'm sure a lot of fans are going to look up free agents and say, well, he's really good and he's played guard. Why, this sounds like it should work.
Yeah.
The name that really, and I'm going to write an article about this. We can joke a little bit about how I kind of published a blank article about this last night, is somebody I'm looking at because he's very similar in terms of physical profile to Sua Opeta, close in age. He's got some experience as a fill-in starter. But Phil Haynes, who played guard for he was with Seattle last year. So I think that if they want somebody with some experience as a backup guard, Phil Haynes could be a name to be on the lookout for them to bring in. Everybody talks about, will Hainsey maybe get a chance at guard? I just don't see it.
I don't
Everything
think so,
that the Bucs have done over the past few years, it's shown that they really want a dedicated backup center. It has been Hainsey for the last few years, and then obviously he's been elevated with Ryan Jensen's injuries. But then you also saw like Nick Leverett, who played really well at guard, he took over as a starter in 2022, about halfway through the year. The following year, he wasn't really given an opportunity at guard.
They wanted to protect his availability as that backup center. Right.
Yeah. So I think Hainsey's really locked in as that backup center. Although, just to fully fill out the report from today, Hainsey was working with the ones today. Graham Barton was working with the twos. Although I do think that it's Graham Barton's job to lose.
I agree. And the interesting thing is, Robert Hainsey has been a 2-year starter, and now he's in a contract year. He's making better money because he's in that final year of his deal, but he's not going to have a chance to really put some film out there on tape for other teams to, look at him. But he does have 2 years as a starting center for the Buccaneers, replacing Ryan Jensen. So, folks, there is no replacement really for Celsius. If you're looking for an energy drink to get you going every day, do what we do at Pewter Report, and that is have a Celsius. I start my morning. It's replaced coffee for me with a Celsius, and I think you should too. And they're damn good. They've got amazing flavors. They're coming out with new ones. The newest flavor is cherry cola, which I've yet to try, but I heard it's phenomenal. And why wouldn't it be? Everything from Celsius is phenomenal. I don't love all the flavors, but they have so many now that I can literally put together my favorite top 10 list, and I have 10 flavors of Celsius that I actually love. Orange is my absolute favorite. So what I'm asking you to do is, if you have not tried a Celsius today, do a couple of things. Number one, go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator, find a Celsius location near you. That may be a convenience store, might be a health and fitness store. It might be a big store, a grocery store. You'll see them at Walmart. You'll see them in Publix, different shopping stores like that. It might even be your bodega. Once you find a Celsius that you like, go ahead and order it in bulk on Amazon, and they'll ship it right to your door. And that's the best part, because you save money by doing that. It's actually more economical to do that. And if you're not exactly sure what favorite flavor you have, you can always get the variety pack, because as Matt Matera always says, variety is the spice of life. So whether it's grabbing the individual cans at a convenience store or buying them in cases at your grocery stores or your health and fitness stores, or getting those cases sent to your house at Amazon, you can't lose, because Celsius has the essential energy that you need to power your active life every day. So make every day a Celsius day. It's what we do here at Pewter Report, and highly recommend Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. So let's see, we talked about the injuries, and we have not heard any disparaging, or I should say discouraging words from the MRI. I'm not sure if that's happened yet or if it's happening later this afternoon.
I think it has happened at this point.
Yeah. And, bad news travels fast typically. So fingers crossed for Yaya Diaby. He's literally one of, like, a friend of the program. He's been on a Pewter Report podcast several times. Just an absolute whale of a nice guy, but a monster on the field. And he has been giving offensive tackles Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke fits. I talked to both of those tackles the other day about Tristan, and Luke Gedeke said he's an absolute handful. Tristan Wirfs said he's a monster. He's going to take the league by storm this year. So they cannot afford to lose this guy. And I will say this: I've got a Pewter pulse coming where I'm going to talk about this. So I don't want to sit there and ruin it for you guys. I appreciate all the views we got in my latest one, which was what the heck happened to Todd Bowles. That's been well received by you Pewter people, which I love. But there has not been that guy that has stepped up opposite Yaya Diaby that's in his class right now, Josh. I've seen more practices than you, but you've seen enough between Anthony Nelson, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Chris Braswell, Marquise Watts, Jose Ramirez. They've flashed a little bit, but there's not been anybody that's been close to Yaya's level yet.
Yeah, I from what I've seen, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think Yaya is practicing at a whole other level, and the rest of the group is playing well as a part of a unit, but nobody who stood out. And we've had lots of conversations here at Pewter Report about what could this Todd Bowles defense look like if they had a truly elite alpha edge rusher. Yeah. And I think Yaya's probably, based on his practicing, the closest to that. And without him, barring a huge upgrade from Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and I'm his biggest supporter, I think, in Bucs world. And even I don't think that he has that kind of ceiling at this point in his career. Then you're still looking at a good defense, because let's be honest, Todd Bowles hasn't had that rusher since 2021. Shaq Barrett, 2021, and yet his defenses have been good, above average in 2022 and 2023 with a group effort and a strategic mind calling creative blitzes. Yeah,
exactly. And, we know that Todd Bowles will manufacture sacks, and you get 6 sacks from your blitzing all-pro safety, right? I mean, he can manufacture sacks like nobody's business. It doesn't have to necessarily come from those 2 edge rushers. I mean, the Buccaneers were humming when they had JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Shaq Barrett still in their prime, going for it with the Super Bowl and even the follow-up year in 2021. So that's ideally how Todd Bowles wants it, because he wants to be able to rush 4 and not have to depend and rely on those pressure packages, bringing 5 and 6 defenders at the quarterback. He would love nothing better than to put pressure on the quarterback with 4 and have 7 guys back there to pick off some more passes. That's the ideal thing. But if that can't happen again, he's full on ready to go and sick his squad on the opposing quarterbacks. We saw Yaya Diaby lead this team with 7.5 sacks last year. Vita Vea had 6.5 sacks to lead the team, I believe, the year prior. So not ideal, but he can still manufacture those sacks with his creativity in those blitz packages.
And could you imagine the evolution of this defense? We've seen that Todd Bowles can create elite pressure packages with 5, 6, 7, 8 rushers. But if you look at the evolution of the NFL as a whole, the really en vogue defense that you're going to see really sweeping the league this year would be that Mike McDonald. He was with Baltimore last year as their defensive coordinator. Now he's going to be he is the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. But you're seeing more of that sim pressure, right? Where it's 4 rushers. But it's for, unexpected rushers, right? It's not your traditional pass rushers who are coming in. Some of them are dropping, which you've seen with Todd Bowles. But typically
dropping in coverage today.
That's right. He did it earlier today. He broke up a pass intended for Chris Godwin over the middle. But with Bowles, what you see is you'll see guys in unexpected positions like Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey dropping into coverage, but it's still usually with 5 or more rushers. And imagine if he has a 4-man group that he trusts to win some one-on-ones. Now you could see him even dip his toe more into the water of the sim pressure type of defense and really kind of complete that he's a savant in everything, right?
Yes.
He can hit 4-man rushes. He can hit the blitz packages that he has become known for. And now you start to see him, because the angles that he will bring guys from are truly unique.
Yeah.
But doing it with less guys and putting more into coverage,
right?
Now you can see even more turnovers, right?
Yes.
From people not named Antoine Winfield Jr.
Right. And let's not leave Lavonte David out of the equation either. 4.5 sacks last year for the old man. Still getting the job done as a blitzer. And I tell you what, the 2 guys that have really stood out to me this week, especially, I should say, since the start of camp, Tykee Smith is an absolute dog as a blitzer. I mean, you talk about timing it well. And what I've noticed is when Christian Izien, when he's up there in the slot, and I think he's going to lose his job to Tykee Smith. I think Christian Izien is going to be a backup free safety this year. Tavier Thomas continues to look good as a nickel. I think Tykee Smith will end up being the starting nickel. Tykee Smith's football IQ is just it's exactly what Todd Bowles wants in a football player. He wants somebody to be incredibly cerebral, and you know, I know I'm walking on some hallowed ground here when I mentioned the word.
Oh, are
Rondé
you about
Barber.
to bring that? Oh, wow.
Well, I'm just saying, like Rondé had a knack for blitzing, and sometimes you show it, right, and you can go when you have you know, a particular back that's back there in pass protection. The last line of defense is that blocking back sometimes for the quarterback. And when Ronnie would do film study, and he would say, this guy always, you know, will bite on an outside move, and I'll just come inside and sack the quarterback. He would do that. Rondé was also really good at that half-step delay blitz. And I've seen that from Tykee Smith, which is you're in the slot and you literally take 1 half step backwards to just get that quarterback and that back to sit there and say, okay, not coming, and then don't worry about it, right? And that back kind of like peeks over to the left, not coming, and then looks to the right. And all of a sudden, the minute that back looks to the right, it's that half step back and then full sprint inside. And what Tykee Smith does is he comes in so tight to the offensive line, right? And just literally slithers around the corner. And he must have 4 to 5 sacks, would-be sacks, in training camp this year. And we saw another one today. And Kalen DeLoach had 2 today in a very similar manner. Like that, it's not a delay blitz where, you know, you're coming from the linebacker level, right? And you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's 2 or 3 seconds, and then you're coming. It's literally just at the snap of the ball, you're not charging, you're waiting that half count, and then you're going. And I think that's something that has really proven to be effective. We've seen that with Lavonte David, who's very adept at that kind of half delay blitz.
Yep. I think somebody else is Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yes.
Right? Antoine Winfield Jr. has a career, I want to say almost 30% pressure rate, right?
Yeah.
I, as a matter of fact, Antoine Winfield Jr. is so good at pass rushing. When I did my predicting sacks article last month, and then we did an entire episode on it, you asked me to do a specific projection just for Antoine Winfield Jr. Well, I'm going to kind of tie this all in. Like I said, Winfield, I want to say career rate is around 30% pressure rate, or 25 to 30% here in the NFL. Last season, Tykee Smith had 9 pressures and 32 pass rush attempts. That's good for about 28% pressure rate, so right around that same number. And friend of the program, Marcus Whitman, who he's got his own YouTube channel where he does a lot of football analysis. His number 1 comp for Tykee Smith in this year's draft, his pro comp for him was none other than Antoine Winfield Jr. So, so just kind of putting it all together there. And I agree with you. I think that is one of those traits that Tykee's going to bring to the slot that elevates his game because he's paired with Todd Bowles in a system that is similar to what he ran at Georgia. and in a position, at Georgia, they called it the star, but
Yep.
basically he was playing, I want to say 16, because I'm actually I was right before this, we got on here, I was writing up the NFC South Nickelback rankings. And I was going over Tykee Smith last year. 69% of his snaps came in the slot.
Yeah.
So he's got experience there at a high level program. I know you like to call the SEC the NFL Light,
Junior.
NFL Junior. That's it. So just, I think a lot of arrows are pointing up. I said on draft day, and I've maintained it, Tykee Smith was my favorite pick of the Bucs draft. And I think we're seeing it here in practice. Yeah,
for sure. And I remember when I was talking to Todd Bowles the week before training camp, had an interview with him, and Todd pretty much told me, he's like, I was going to get one of those Georgia safeties in the third round, and I said, you got the right one. I mean, nothing against Jonathan Bullard. I think he's a good player, and I watch a ton of Georgia games. I mean, my wife's from Georgia, so Saturdays for me, it's Kansas State football and Georgia Bulldogs football for years now, and so I'm very well versed in Georgia Bulldogs football, and I like Bullard, but I like Tykee Smith better. And I remember him playing at West Virginia in the Big 12 against my Wildcats and other teams. And so when he transferred to Georgia, I was like, holy smokes! I mean, they got Lucine, they got Bullard, they have some really good safeties, not to mention their front, right? But it only took him, he got injured. It took him a couple of years to get on the field, and had a really good debut, helping them win a national championship. And last year, I thought he was the best player on their defense.
Yeah, I had Tykee above Javon because I evaluated both of them. Tykee was my number one safety that I evaluated. Javon Bullard was number 2 for me. I had them very, very close, but Tykee was the number one safety that I evaluated for this past draft, which was why I was so excited about the Bucs getting him in the third round.
Yeah.
And really excited to see what he can do on the field here in less than 10 days.
Yep. Big time playmaker. Joel Rican, $5 super chat. Great seeing you at practice today, Joel. Thanks for coming up and saying hello to me. Watching the clip of Tykee breaking down his college film was awesome. Football is like a second language for him. That's right. That was on the In the Current show the Buccaneers produced. That was one of the best episodes I've seen. I'm a draft junkie and a bit of a draftnik, so that was great to see the behind the scenes with the scouts and Jason Light and John Spytek and Mike Beal and all those scouts talking about the process, and then actually showing us some of that interview footage with Graham Barton and with Tykee Smith. And you could just tell that Tykee Smith knows 2 languages fluently, English and football. Mm-hmm. And you could see Larry Foote just trying not to smile too big, sitting next to him, right, and talking about that. And then you see, Tykee saying, "What do you guys look for, in a defensive back?" You could pretty much see Larry Foote say, like, I'm reading between the lines here with his facial expression, "What do we look for? Dude, we look for you. That's what we look for. We look for you. You're that guy."
Yeah. I think the other thing that was really cool, and I wrote about this not too long ago, was that episode of In the Current, which, by the way, if you haven't seen In the Current and you're a Bucs fan, you are missing out. Yeah, that is so fantastic. And if you have watched HBO's kind of off-season Hard Knocks featuring the New York Giants, which was a really well-produced thing, I think In the Current's better. And it goes through many of the same periods of time. But in that episode, when they talked about Graham Barton, and by them, I mean the Bucs scouting department, their player development department. When they talked about Graham Barton and Chris Braswell, the first things that came out of the scouts' mouths were, we really appreciated the fact that they stayed where they were at. Chris Braswell was buried behind 2 first-round edge rushers back-to-back years, Will Anderson Jr. and then
Dallas Turner,
right?
Yeah.
He's kind of buried behind them, and he wasn't even technically the starter last year. He was a rotational player. Graham Barton had a chance to leave Duke for a lot of money. Now with name, image, and likeness payments being able to be given to players, both of them stayed. Yeah. Now, but then you'll sit there and say Tykee Smith, he transferred. Well, the Bucs asked him about that, and he goes, "Yeah, I transferred. I wanted to play against the best, and I wanted to beat out the best because, like you said, with Lewis Seen, with some of those other safeties, Javon Ballard, Chris, I can't remember his last name, Taylor, I think. They had a lot of good safeties on that team. And yes, he got hurt in 2021 and he only played like 9 snaps, but then in 2022, he was a backup.
Yeah.
He earned that starting role in 2023.
Yeah.
And that was something that the Bucs appreciate. If you're going to transfer, it better be because you want the harder path, not the easier path. Yeah. And Tykee Smith convinced them that he transferred for the right reasons as far as the Bucs are concerned. He wanted the hardest path possible to show that he is elite against elite.
Yeah. You know, there's certain players, and I'm not going to name names, but it's different, and it was actually off-putting to the organization. And I've talked to some people that were in those rooms talking to some of the draft prospects. And it's like, you know, you might have a guy that's a star player at a smaller school, right? And he, you know, he wanted to go to a better team, and he was a star player at that team. And then he kept leapfrogging from school to school to school, and he was the star player at each stop. And, you know, it's one thing to maybe want to play a better competition, but it's kind of like when you're the star and you leave, you're hurting the team, right? And it's like, what are you chasing, right? You're a 1,000-yard guy, whatever. Like, what are you doing this for? And it wasn't for the team. It was for him, and it was selfish. And that is not the type of player the Buccaneers are looking for. They're looking for the Tristan Wirfs. They're looking for the Graham Bartons. They're looking for the Chris Braswells, the Tykee Smiths, those guys that want to stay and fight and compete against the best and all of that. And I think that's a great point. If you're just joining the show a little bit late here, no worries. We're happy to have you. Yaya Diaby gave everybody a scare today, went down, was carted off the field with a left ankle injury. PewterReport.com, we've reported, and it's on the front page of our website if you want to check out the story. X-rays came back negative. There's no fracture. There's no Achilles tendon injury, which is good. Actually, it's great news. He has probably either a bone bruise or at worst a high ankle sprain that might knock him out for the preseason, but he has been hell on wheels the first week of camp. And I think that whenever he gets back on the field, he's going to pick up where he left off. He spent some time this offseason working on the body, working on the pass rush and everything. Jordan Whitehead was out again today. It is a thigh bruise. That's not a serious injury, probably a day-to-day injury. Chase Edmonds continues to be out with an undisclosed injury. No surprise there. Cameron Johnson was the only other Buccaneer, the rookie out of Barton College, undrafted free agent that didn't participate. Not sure what his injury is. We'll see. Sean Peterson, also the outside linebacker, didn't practice as well. So good news, crisis averted with Yaya Diaby not having a serious injury. He'll have an MRI this afternoon if it hasn't happened already. And we'll see if we can get the latest news for that later on this evening. Tristan Wirfs. Josh, let's talk about that contract again real quick, just for those that are joining us. Highest paid Buccaneer ever, and also the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. Yeah.
5 years, $140.63 million. That's an extension on top of the 1 year he was already under contract here for 2024 at $18.3 million. So all told, you're looking at $159 million, give or take, over 6 years. The effective APY on that is just under $26.5 million per year. The new money APY, which is what you see reported in your various news streams, would be $28.125 million per year, all setting records for offensive linemen. And as you said, biggest contract in Bucs history. $88 million total guarantees. That's not fully guaranteed, which means that if something were to happen tomorrow, he doesn't get $88 million. The full guarantees haven't been reported yet as far as I've seen, but they should come somewhere in the $40 to $50 million range. There's a good chance that the Bucs probably do a rolling guarantee structure like they've done with Vita Vea that will eventually add up to that $88 million if everything goes the way all parties plan. So that's the contract. It's great for both sides in different ways. We'll see what the cash flows look like. It will clear up cap space for the Bucs. Wirfs' cap number was a little over $18 million this year, playing on that 5th-year option. Good chance that you're going to see that go down by $10 to $12 million, depending on how they prorate out bonuses. But with it being a 5-year extension, I can guarantee you there will be a large chunk of money in some type of bonus proration that'll be spread out over the next 5 to 6 years. Yeah. But it's good for both sides. It's something that I know a lot of fans were worried about getting done before week 1. I think we've been saying the entire time, have patience. They're going to get there before week 1. They finally got it over the finish line, and Jason Licht can now have his second boat parade.
Exactly. Well, I don't know where Tristan Wirfs handles his investments, but the recommendation I've got is our folks at Immuni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. The good folks at Immuni Financial will help Tristan Wirfs or you or even me with your finances and planning ahead to stay ahead. And whether it's advisory services, brokerage services, legacy and retirement planning, investment banking, insurance services, annuities, Immuni Financial. Make sure you visit our folks over at Immuni at immuni.com. Even if you have a financial advisor, it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion, especially when it's your finances, especially when it's your retirement and your investments. So give the folks at Immuni a call. There's no obligation to do anything. It's not going to cost you a penny, but speak with Mark, speak with the folks over there. And I guarantee you they can help you, whether you're in Florida or across the country. Immuni.com with Immuni Financial is the place to go when you're looking for advisory services for your investments. Josh, we've had a fun time at practice. It ended on a scary note, but I think the good news is the crisis has been averted when it comes to Yaya Diaby's injury. We have another show tomorrow. It's Bucs Rookies on the Rise at 4:00 Eastern time right here on Pewter Report TV. We are over 14,700 folks, thanks to you guys, you awesome Pewter people. Thanks for subscribing to our Pewter Report TV podcast, or I should say channel, for all of our Pewter Report podcasts, the Pewter Pulse videos, all of our Bucs training camp video content. Greatly appreciate that. We love the comments. When you do two things, when you leave us a thumbs up and like, and you also leave us a comment, that helps the Pewter Report TV YouTube algorithm and gets us in front of more awesome Bucs fans like yourself. Cool is... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, how cool is Tristan Wirfs on a day where he received a contract? He actually gave me
He was
a
in a
bottle.
giving mood. Yeah.
He was in a giving mood with this Cedar Ridge Iowa bourbon whiskey, straight from Iowa. So thank you, Tristan. This is phenomenal.
Have you had a chance to crack it open?
Yes, I have, and I've got an empty glass to show for it too. So
wonderful.
I kept it Midwest. I put it in my Kansas State Wildcat glass. So.
There you go. I was going to say, you were talking about, we really enjoy the comments and you, Scott, can absolutely verify that this is what I'm about to say is true. Earlier today, after the Tristan Wirfs contract news came out, after unfortunately Yaya Diaby went down with that ankle injury, I advocated for us to keep our original topic for the podcast. Yeah, Did right. I not? I said, let's just do the entire episode on the Rookies on the Rise, because in my mind, the comments that we would have gotten for doing an entire hour on Rookies on the Rise and not mentioning Tristan Wirfs' contract, not mentioning any of the injuries on Yaya Diaby. I still maintain those comments would have been entertaining.
They might, you might have had some pretty pissed off Buccaneer fans, asking about what the heck happened at practice aside from the rookies. We'll talk about the rookies tomorrow, folks. So we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in for the latest Pewter Report podcast here. Make sure you follow pewterreport.com. We have tons of stories from Bucs training camp coverage, including today's Insider from Bailey Adams, and breaking down Tristan Wirfs' contract, a great column from Josh Capo. Follow us on social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. And, of course, Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. Greatly appreciate all of the follows and subscriptions we get. When we say subscriptions, it's free. It's all you have to do is hit the subscribe button. I'm not sure why they use the term subscribe on YouTube, but they do. Just hit the button. It's free, and we greatly appreciate it. So for Josh Capo, great seeing you out of practice the last couple of days. I'm Scott Reynolds. Thank you all for tuning into the Pewter Report podcast, and we'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock for another edition